Now, on Monday, UK's Prime Minister Rishi Sunak fired UK's then Home Secretary Suella Braverman, infamous for her off-the-cuff remarks. This in a reshuffle of his top team that brought one of his predecessors, David Cameron, unexpectedly back into the government as the Foreign Secretary. Here's a report by CNN News 18's Sanjay Sood.
Yes, quite a dramatic reshuffle. Former Prime Minister David Cameron hauled back in from the political wilderness now to take the position of Foreign Secretary, a role that he filled in quite immediately and very visibly with a visit to Kiev. A surprise move, certainly less surprising, the departure of Suella Braverman as Home Secretary. She had been asking for that for a long time, with one misplaced remark after another. The latest, the description of the Palestinian protests as hate marches and description of those joining these as pro-Palestinian mobs. And what's more, she defied 10 Downing Street, which had instructed her to change some of the text that she had used in describing these marches. Clearly, she disregarded the authority of the Prime Minister, paid a price for it, as perhaps she knew she would. And of course, she hasn't gone quietly. She's described Rishi Sunak as weak, accused him of betrayal, of indulging in wishful thinking, and with her went that pet project of hers of sending asylum seekers to Rwanda. The Supreme Court ruled against it. Now the government is trying to revive that in some other form, but that will of course now be another plan for another day and will no doubt run into another set of challenges.
All right, but what will this mean for the Tories and as far as the upcoming next election for UK is concerned? Let's try and get in a sense of perspective. And for that, let me introduce my guest today. I'm joined in by Maximilian Hess, who's an author and political commentator. Many thanks to you, Maximilian, for joining in. Now, both Cleverly and Cameron are regarded as moderates, and the changes now signal a shift away from the divisive politics that was championed by Ms. Braverman and the right-wing faction of the Conservatives. What explains Rishi Sunak's swerve to the centre?
I think that Rishi is looking to protect his position ahead of the election next year. So there's an election due by the end of the year. It's likely to be called earlier. Some have predicted May, some October. And I think he wants to try to reframe the Conservative Party going into that vote with a view in particular to protecting their base in the South, what's often called the blue wall here, the seats around London and in the home counties and stretching into the Midlands a little bit, where the Conservatives have traditionally done very well. But they have also underperformed significantly in recent by-elections against the Liberal Democrats in particular, as well as Labour. And I think that getting rid of Suella Braverman is really an attempt to try to get rid of that, what is here called the nasty party reputation that the Conservatives occasionally have. That being said, I don't think that Rishi Sunak is making a full and complete and clean break. We have just seen yesterday, after the Supreme Court ruled that his policy of exporting migrants to Rwanda is illegal under both UK law and under international law from the European Court of Human Rights, that he has attempted to turn this into a kind of Brexit story, to blame the ECHR for it, and to say that he will pass legislation and that he promises that early next year there will be migrants sent on planes from the UK to Rwanda. Even his ministers in his own government have off the record been briefing to the press that they don't think this will happen.
Absolutely. Now, Maximilian, what is David Cameron's return to the cabinet despite the chaos triggered by Brexit? Something, a referendum that he himself wasn't in favor of, yet he conducted one. What does that signify, and how much hopes can be shelved from David Cameron now as the Foreign Secretary of the UK?
You know, I think it shows that loyalty is more important than competence at this time. David Cameron certainly was seen as competent before he became Prime Minister and in some parts of his Prime Ministership, but the Brexit crisis was sort of seen as something that he couldn't come back from, which is why it caused such a shock here in the UK when Rishi Sunak did reappoint him. But, you know, Rishi had come into Conservative politics in large part under David Cameron's wing. He had opposed European Union membership, but in an amicable way and not in the sort of high vitriol campaign that Boris Johnson and others did, and is known to have long had a good relationship with David Cameron and some of the advisors around him. I think that being said, if you look at it too much from a sort of high-level political move, you forget that the impact on the average voter in Britain is actually probably relatively positive. David Cameron is seen not so negatively as his successors, if only by dint of the crises under Boris Johnson and Liz Truss. I think for people who, politics isn't their living, they see him as a more likable, middle-of-the-road fellow.
Right.
And as somebody who does help achieve a little bit of that detoxifying of the Tory party that we spoke about earlier. Is it going to be enough to shift the Conservative Party's fortunes and to help them regain anything, regain even some of where they are behind Labour right now, yet alone take the lead? I don't expect it will be, no.
We leave it at that. Many thanks to you, Maximilian Hess, for joining in. And with that,